everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Front. Thanks for joining me today. As always, you can check out the website at leadtheteam.net for free sales training, for motivational content, and for leadership tips. And if you would, cruise on over to leadtheteam.tv and subscribe to the YouTube channel there. Make sure you hit that little bell notification icon so you get notified when new episodes are uploaded, which I'm doing right now every Wednesday and Sunday. And I would love to have you join me. So today, I'm talking about being brave enough to start a conversation that matters. Right now, on The Front.
Thanks for tuning in to Lead the Teams, The Front.
Yes, thank you so much for taking the time to tune in and join me today. My name is Mike Phillips, and I will be your host. This is The Front, and the topic today is being brave enough to start a conversation that matters. Now, this has been on my idea list for an episode of The Front for some time, and I decided, you know what? Today, we're going to start a conversation that matters. Now, today is not about a list or items that you got to go and execute on and taking notes. You know, today is a little bit different format than normal. It's one of those shows, that rather than doing those activities and taking notes and that kind of stuff, you may just listen to it twice. Today's show is a reminder to the people that are in leadership, that are in management, that are mentors, that are parents, that are coaches and counselors. That's what this is about engaging in real conversations with people. It's for anyone that's in a role that's going to listen to somebody, engage in that conversation, and then be willing to put themselves out there and offer advice. Conversations with other people, when you're talking with somebody and you're taking the time to listen to them and then offer up what your opinion is through your experience, through the things you've been through, actually caring enough to really listen and engage with them, it can make such a huge impact for both people that are involved. Now, if you're in one of those roles that I mentioned before, sometimes it's scary to start one of these conversations. That's why I'm saying you've got to be brave enough, because if you're not willing to have a conversation like this that's really important to somebody, the outcome is always inevitable, right? It's going to be the worst possible thing. We build it up in our minds and we think, man, if I have this conversation with this person, here's the potential outcome. We build it up in our minds when we're getting ready to speak to the person about what the talk is going to be, how it's going to progress, and how it's going to end. So let's talk about some categories or some examples of the talk that I'm referring to. It could be something like an employee falling on hard times. They're focused on the wrong things. They're emotionally distraught. They're financially broken. And oftentimes as a leader, we think we're going to step in and have a talk with that employee, and we're worried that they're just going to blow out. And sometimes it's just that they need somebody to listen. Or how about somebody that's in a mentorship role, having a conversation with a recovering alcoholic, and they're having to ask that tough question, did you have a drink this weekend? Because in that situation, no, one drink is never okay, right? But that's a tough conversation from time to time to start. If you're in a mentorship role for somebody like that, that can be a really difficult conversation, because then the person on the receiving end starts to question the trust and the motives. So you have to come from a place of genuine caring. It could be a parent having a talk about sex, because that's a really hard conversation to have. I've been through that one. If you're a parent, you're a mentor to your kids, and to have that sex conversation, and yes, I'm not calling it the birds and the bees. Let's not sugarcoat it. Let's talk with our kids genuinely about what sex is and about what sex isn't. Have them learn it from you, the parent, but you're going to have to be the one to start the conversation if you want them to learn it from you, rather than all the junk that's going to influence them from their peer group, right? I mean, I would rather have it come from me for any one of my kids than I would from somebody that really doesn't know or doesn't carry the same values as what I do. That conversation could be one that you're having with a salesperson that's doing just enough to get by. They're doing just enough to make it, but they're not fulfilling their full potential because they don't want to make too much money. And you go, Mike, well, that's insane. But there are people in that situation because if they make too much money, they may owe it to somebody else. It may create a different situation for them that's uncomfortable. And so to start that conversation sometimes can be really difficult. And lastly, for example, it could be a coach telling a kid, hey, you know what? You made second string. Or worse, you didn't make the team, and here's what you need to work on. You have to care enough to take the time to tell that kid what they need to work on, and then to have that conversation with the parents. It can be really uncomfortable. If you never have that conversation, that child that's engaged in athletics, they may just cruise through life thinking that everything's going to be okay, and then wondering why they didn't make that team, or wondering why they didn't get that call for their college scholarship, or whatever the other potential outcomes are. Now, these are just thought starters, but if you, as a mentor, as a leader, as a parent, as a coach, as a counselor, are not willing to initiate that conversation with somebody, if you don't care enough, right? You have to care to the point that it is uncomfortable for you not to have the conversation. And you've got to start it. Because when you start it, that will make an impact in somebody else's life. And if you're unwilling to start having the conversation, then basically it just condones whatever the outcome is cruising through life, right? Whatever the outcome was going to be, it's going to be. So you need to engage. You've got to be brave. It takes courage to sit down and talk with somebody like this. So as I'm coming to the tail end today, I ask you as a leader, you're in a leadership position. I ask you, what would you do if you weren't afraid? If you weren't afraid to start that conversation, if you weren't afraid of what the potential outcome is on the other side, if you weren't afraid of what they might say, you need to work on. You know, that's one of the reasons I think we often will not have that conversation is as you're talking to somebody, when you're in that close role with somebody, it can be difficult to say the least if you're saying, hey, what am I doing that's messing up? What can I do to help you? And if the recipient says to you, well, here's what I really need your help with and I need you to work on, then it says something about you, right? That can be really uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for them to say that to you, but let me give you a tip. If you're not the one to be brave enough to start this conversation, the other person that you know needs to be engaged in it, the other person that you know needs to have this conversation, they will never initiate the conversation for fear that either they'll be judged, for fear that you don't care, for fear that nothing will change, right? They'll never initiate that conversation. They'll keep going status quo, and then what happens? It just fades out. If you never start the conversation, the outcome is inevitable. It will be exactly what you didn't want it to be. It'll be exactly what you didn't want it to be. It'll be your worst fear. It'll be that thing that you thought, oh man, I wouldn't want this to happen. That's what's going to happen if you don't start that conversation. How do you know when it's time to start? Because most people that are in one of these leader or mentorship roles, you have a certain level of emotional intelligence. You can pick up on the vibe from the other person. Right? You know if an employee is struggling. You know if your salesperson's not living up to their full potential. You know if your spouse is struggling in a relationship. You know if that kid that's playing on your team is struggling and you just need to tell them that one thing. So when it comes to a situation like that, face this fear head on. Have the courage. Be brave enough to initiate the talk. What you want to do is you want to help them steer the outcome, not become a victim of their outcome. Be brave enough to start a conversation that matters. It'll impact other people and you will grow from it as well. So that's my whole message today on the front. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune in and join me. As always, if you've gained something out of this episode, please give it a thumbs up. Share the video on your social media. Make sure you subscribe to the channels and the podcast and the YouTube. Go check out the Lead the Team shop. We've got really cool stuff with Fire Lion logos on it, and I would love to have you order some of that and then share that on your social media also. So I hope you're having an amazing day. Until we speak next, I hope you have an absolutely fantastic day. We'll talk to you soon, everybody.